All right, everyone. Welcome to the recorded version of Recovery Unplugged Live. Sorry for the delay and sorry for the issues on Facebook. If you tuned in and you're new to the page, I don't know what the scoop is with Facebook today, but it wasn't allowing us to do the stream live, so we're recording it. So what's up, Amy?
Well, this previous week entailed me getting a synopsis together and getting my most recent memoir, which I've been writing, edited and ready to go, and I've been editing the script, and they're going to be taking it out to market. My
And
manager.
the memoir is of the movie? It is of the
No,
experience of the movie?
no, that's another memoir that's due out any day now.
Okay, what's
That's
this one?
this one is called Breakdown the Bestseller, and it's just another take on my experiences. It's like instead of my experiences in letters, I tell you what much more in the traditional memoir format.
Gotcha, okay. And you did a film version of Breakdown the Bestseller.
Yes, I did.
Yep. Okay. Gotcha. Anything else?
Uh, there hasn't been much going on. I mean, it's pretty. Other than getting all these, I had to like get a headshot together. Had to get a lot of things together for Krista in order for her to be able to package me
Mm-hmm.
everything to be just right. It takes time to do this and to do it right. And you really only when you have a project, you usually only get one go at at where I want to go, which, she's talked about where she was gonna shop it, and I'm not at liberty to say that on
Live or
live or taped as it is. She's doing what she does. She's my manager.
Okay. And we have Clint here. Clint was involved with Letters to Daniel, right? Are there any specific questions you have for him that relate to his experience on the full feature film?
Actually, I don't actually ask him anything about Letters to Daniel.
Well, that was
Only
my question then. So then we can talk about
No,
that before we
yeah, we can talk
before we
about
get into
that.
the interview.
Oh, I don't know if I want him to talk about.
Oh yeah, we do.
No, he was easy to work with. You know, he's. There's a reason why he wins awards for his work.
Mm-hmm.
He won an award for Letters to Daniel for his work on it.
Yeah,
Yeah, so
that goes to show you right there. I was
good.
thinking more about him saying what his experiences
Oh,
were.
what your experience? I hope it's nothing too bad.
Oh, we
I
can't hear
can't
you.
hear you.
We can't hear you.
My mistake.
There we
I
go.
hit the
There we
mute
go.
button.
Yep, you're good.
No, it wasn't a bad experience. It wasn't hard. I think the toughest part is when you're making editorial decisions, and you know that everyone in the film worked so hard on something, and then you cut people out of it, or you make big judgment calls, and you're always just trying to serve the story, but in the back of your head, you're thinking, God, these people are going to be brokenhearted.
Right,
Yeah.
right.
Yeah, everybody did what I asked them to do.
I
And
had
they
3 lines, and you cut 2 of them.
You're
Like
welcome.
this was my big break. I gave a Grammy performance, I believe, or see, I don't even know
Oscar?
the right. I don't
No,
even know the right
Grammy's
term.
music.
That's music. That was on last night. That's why it's in my brain. I gave an award-winning performance, and I ended up on the chopping block.
Well, here's the problem. You were just so good.
Well, yeah, that was my question.
And I didn't want you to
Do remember me,
overshadow.
and like, how much sleep did you lose knowing that you cut
I-
66% of
days.
of my part?
Days. I went days without sleeping, and I honestly, I just felt like if I left you all 3 of those lines, nobody'd be talking about the film. They'd just be talking about your performance.
You're very good. I feel much better.
You're
Thank
welcome.
you. Thank you. It really, of course, I turned it into a personal thing, but But yeah, it's good to meet you. We have your demo reel, so I'm gonna go ahead and show your demo reel. It's about 2.5 minutes, and then we'll get back into your guys' interview for Recovery Unplugged, live taped version.
The rape kit came back as rape.
Wait, are you trying to find different degrees of bad? She was attacked, Burns. She was raped. I'm concerned about her emotional well-being. Like, she's gonna need someone to talk to.
She'll be fine.
She's not gonna be fine, okay? You and I, we deal with this shit. We understand because we train day and night how to deal with losing control so that we don't lose control. But she's a 15-year-old girl that just learned she has no control over her own body. She just learned what it means to be a victim. You and I have a little experience with victims. There are those who get the proper support and move on, and those that don't and fall down the rabbit hole. Now she's gonna need someone to talk to, and you need to get your fucking head out of your ass. I'll have no more marriages.
You said you loved me. You swore it. You wrote me poetry drenched in honey. Who are you?
I'm a knight of the New Order. I'm no longer interested in childish things. If it's honesty and fairness you need, get thee to a nunnery.
I was prepared to give you another chance.
Your first mistake was assuming that I wanted one.
Yes, exactly. It doesn't matter whether you should play music, whether you're good at it or not. You should just make music. And you should cook food, whether you are good at it or not. You should just cook food.
Right, create, whether you're good at it or not. Yeah. You know what? You're not. I heard someone say you're not the judge. If you're creating something, you cannot be the judge of whether it's good or bad. All you're doing is creating it. And if you bog yourself down with that judgment of whether it's good or bad, you're missing the point. The point is creation.
We thank you all for your time. We'd like to thank all the farmers. We'd like to thank the Lords of Leicester. Again, a little bit for Leicester and a lot for the Lords. And we'd like to thank the Lord.
Tonight we have a very special guest, independent director, editor, screenwriter, and twice nominated for the Pushcart Award, and my friend and collaborator on films such as All in the Family, Something to Believe in, and most recently, Letters to Daniel. Please welcome Clint Gaige. Let's start with what it was that got you started in the industry, and what was that job like?
Well, getting started in the industry, when I got started, I was a kid. I'm lucky enough to be a second generation media kid. So my first job was cleaning the toilet. And the way it worked was if I would clean the toilet once a week, I was allowed to intern in the editing and camera room. So I was allowed to assist with the cameras and I was allowed to sit with the editor. And that's how I got started. I got started cleaning toilets.
It's all got to start somewhere.
That's right. Yeah. Well, to me, it was a fair trade.
Yeah. You have spent 20 plus years editing and are an accomplished independent director as well. You said you initially shot the web series Shotgun Mythos and that you learned a lot from it. What exactly did you learn and what did you do with that knowledge?
I'll tell you, when we did Shotgun Mythos, I learned that it's okay to make mistakes. As long as you learn from them. If you are learning from your mistakes, then they weren't wasted and they weren't really a mistake. If you learn from the experience and grow from it, then everything you do starts moving the project forward and your skill set grows. So what I learned was to not be afraid of errors or mistakes, but to learn from them, and to enjoy that process. And that's a hard thing to remember, is that learning is a process. I think a lot of people beat themselves up when they make a mistake, me included. I used to as well. And what Shotgun Mythos taught me was, mistakes have purpose, because that's how you learn.
Okay. I believe A Clean Exit made its festival debut at AOF in 2016, which
Yes.
is incidentally where we met.
Yes.
Can you tell everybody what that experience was like?
Which experience? A Clean Exit or AOF?
A Clean Exit debuting at AOF. Actually, it's really two questions in one. What A Clean Exit was like, and what it was like debuting at AOF.
Yeah. It was, I'll tell you that when you first get there, it's overwhelming. Because there's just so much to see. There's so many people to talk to. There is just so much going on that it can be overwhelming. And the thing I love, and I'll remember it for a long time. I got there on the first night, actually the night before the festival started, and they were having a creators meet and greet dinner, whatever you'd call it. I don't remember the technical name that they had for it. But it was basically a chance for everybody who had a film at the festival to meet each other and to talk, mingle. And I went in, I didn't know anybody, didn't know a soul. And I am an introvert. I don't do the, hi, my name's Clint very well. I have to force myself to do that.
Yeah.
And I remember seeing Dell, and I recognized him from his picture. And I was like, oh man, that's the festival director, and not knowing, how to approach him or what to say. And all of a sudden, this big bear of a man comes running over. Clint Gaige, great movie. Loved A Clean Exit. And he knew details about the movie. And then my co-star, my leading man was with me. He knew Ian. He knew us both, gave us big bear hugs. And everything after that was smooth sailing. Once, you just felt...
it's like a family.
It was incredibly warm.
Yeah, it's like not all festivals are like that, is what I learned.
No.
And
no.
And in my experience, like before I got to AOF, I knew not all experiences were like that. So
right.
And it's something special. And when I love Dell. So he if he likes your work, he likes your work. But he'll tell you what he's thinking. Oh yeah, yeah.
Well, and he'll give you honest feedback, which is invaluable. If all you hear is, "Oh, that's great. Oh, you're wonderful," then you're not hearing. You're not getting the tools you need to grow.
They have some incredible seminars they put on there. I mean, you've put on seminars there, but when I went, I remember.
Yeah, I did a seminar 2 years ago there. Yeah. I went to, in fact, the first year, I went and saw Morgan Shepherd.
He was wonderful, wasn't he?
He was incredible. And I was so sad when he passed, but that seminar, I'll remember that seminar for the rest of my life.
Oh, he did. Oh, he was like, say, no BS, salt of the earth kind of guy.
Well, and he spoke plainly about the challenges of acting, which is invaluable for, I think, directors to hear.
Yeah.
So it was a wonderful, AOF is a wonderful experience.
So as I said, we met briefly in 2016, I think once like in passing in the movie theater, and then after the award ceremony.
I actually saw, but I didn't know what I was witnessing. And you've talked about this, so I don't think I'm talking out of the bag.
Okay.
But I saw you having the panic attack, but I didn't know what it was. I didn't know what had happened.
Well, what had happened was I was out there for the first time,
Right.
and I had never gone to a festival without Missy by my
Right.
side. And it, like you said, if you're not careful, it can all be overwhelming.
Right.
And I was there, and there was an individual who was with me, and he took off.
Oh.
And I was like, I am alone. I don't,
Right.
and at that point, I didn't know if my movie was going to screen or not, because they were having problems with my DVDs. Now, this
Okay.
individual eventually saved the day because he put it on a jump drive, and that's what they used to screen it in
Okay.
2016. But he had taken off because he wanted to flirt with some woman, and I was freaking out. And I just started crying. And
Right.
I think her name was Sue. There was an older woman there that wasn't there when they moved to Las Vegas. And she calmed me down. She, you know,
Right.
she kind of helped me. She goes, I'm not panicking. And if I'm not panicking, you don't panic. And
Well, and I one of the things I wanted to tell you is because I've heard you talk about it before, and you've talked about it uh, in other. I don't know if it was talks or if it was in writing that you've talked about it, but it wasn't that bad. I didn't realize what was even happening until I heard you talk about it, and then I'm like, oh, I saw that. I saw it happening. I just didn't realize that was
like
what I
on
saw.
the inside, like on the outside, I thought like I may have looked like it wasn't so bad, but on the inside, a panic attack feels like,
No, I get it.
yeah, it's like the worst thing in the world. It's like the end of the world. I thought I drove 3 days in a car with a crazy aunt to show this movie, and it's not screening.
Right, right.
But it screened. One of my films didn't screen. The little micro, it screened the next year, but it didn't screen that first year because we had problems with it.
Well, and yeah, I mean that can happen. That can happen, and that's something I don't think a lot of filmmakers understand is that there's a lot of moving pieces for a film
And
festival.
and you know, that's the thing. They treated me so well at AOF. I didn't take it personally when that film didn't screen. I didn't think they were like, oh, if this is a personal affront to you. I could see them struggling in the theater to get the file to open. So it wasn't like it was the end of the world. And I knew I could always enter it next year. Whenever they started doing the Hollywood Dreams and AOF, I knew I could submit it to Hollywood Dreams and have a chance getting in.
Got it. Well, yeah.
So yeah. Let's see. We have collaborated in varying degrees on different projects, Letters to Daniel being the most recent one. What is the difference for you between being a director as opposed to just being an editor on a project? And what is your philosophy on not just your films, but others as well?
Well, I mean, when you're editing, and this probably comes from the fact that my experience as an editor is coming up on 30 years now.
Wow.
Yeah. So I've been editing a lot longer than I've been directing. So it's very natural for me to jump into editing mode and answer to the director, because I know my job as an editor is to serve the vision of the director. It doesn't matter if I agree with it or not. It matters whether or not the director feels as if I've served the story. So my take on editing is always it's story first. And I'll argue with the director. Well, we argued.
Yeah, we did, but it was nothing like, oh, I hate you. It wasn't like painful.
No.
And I knew, and look, most of the 95% of the time I deferred to you because you've got, like said, and we have the same philosophy, is that the story comes first.
Well, and I mean, the thing is, I don't get in. I'm always trying to serve the story, so I'm not worried. I don't keep score as to whose idea won.
Yeah,
So
film's a collaborative.
it really boils down to what does the director want, and what does the film need, and sometimes they are diametrically opposed. So it's your job when you're the editor. It becomes your job to explain why what you are calling for is needed, and if you can't be
Persuasive.
if you're not persuasive enough, then maybe you were not right.
Well, I felt like our disagreements, because you were so forthright. I knew it wasn't coming from. That was the great thing about you and Mark being as experienced as you are.
Right.
And yes, this is my 23rd film, but it's my first feature-length narrative film, and that's a lot with a actual crew and with a major amount of cast. And I knew that I was going to be leaning on you all pretty hard, because you all had done it before and I hadn't. And you all had ways of giving me the benefit of your, like, Mark is like coming up on 34 years experience, and you with your 30 years experience. I knew that I had a vision, but that I had picked you all because I knew you knew what you were doing.
Right.
And I knew that most of the time I could defer to whatever you said. Like, we had some disagreements, but it was like when you sent me the first cut of letters, I like to say, it was really good, but I knew what the suggestions you were making, and for the second round and third round of edits, and then with Valio's music and stuff, that it could be something really special. Yeah. And so it could go, you can settle for really good, or you can have really special. And you chose to edit for impact as opposed to sequence of the script. And it really worked. It really made an impact on the final movie.
Well, and sometimes, and directors can lose sight of this because they're so wrapped up in the day-to-day and getting all the shots and meeting their day requirements and working with actors and working with every department. Sometimes they don't see how taking something out of order can make a bigger impact.
That's why I'm hoping if it gets picked up to get made at a bigger budget, I can bring you along, because everybody who's seen it says, "Oh, I love the chapters. What inspired you to do that?" The fact that that was Clint. That's his genius. Because we didn't have some of the connective tissue. You recommended that, and I was like, yeah, sure. And so everybody has been talking about that, and I'm like, well, that was my editor's decision. So obviously I'm going to want to take you if I get to make it again.
Well, and I mean, I'd be happy to do so, but ultimately, if it does go with a studio, they're going to have their own say. So, the whole thing about putting together a film is just to make sure that you're serving the story, and that you are making sure an audience can follow along and enjoy the story. You asked me what the difference is, though.
Yes.
And the difference is when I'm there's actually not much difference, ironically. When I direct my own projects and I get into the editing room, when it's time to edit, I actually forget that I was the director. I don't allow my director brain into the editing room, because if I do that, there's a chance I'll overlook things. So I look at the footage completely as if, as if I don't know who shot it. And every once in a while, my wife will hear me yell from the editing room, who the hell shot this? Excuse my language, but knowing full well that I'm the one who shot it. But I think when you go into the editing room, you have to forget, the old saying, you have to be willing to kill your
Darlings.
darlings.
I learned that in writing.
Well, when I get into the editing room, I forget that I was the writer or director.
Right.
And my focus is, it doesn't matter what I did before. Is this a good story? And how do I make it a better one?
Okay. Okay. I think I asked you that. Let me make sure. Yes. You are also the founder and festival director of Ingenuity Film Festival. How long has it been around and what is its mission?
We're in our third year now, and our mission is to celebrate the engine and the ingenuity that makes independent film happen. One of the things I noticed is when I was on the festival circuit is I would get, as the director of the film, typically when you're doing an indie film, you're the only one who can go to the festival.
Yeah.
So in the festival's defense, they do tend to heap a lot more praise on the director. But one of the things I noticed is that I often would get credit for things I had nothing to do with, other than telling someone what I wanted.
Yeah.
But someone else's art is what took it to the next level and made it award-winning. So I wanted to put together a festival that recognized each and every department as if that department was the rock star. Not trying to take anything away from a director or a writer or a cinematographer or filmmaker. I wanted to really focus on every single department.
And there's a lot of departments.
Yeah. Well, and what we wanted to do is we wanted to, honestly look at films and say, well, the film may not be that good. It may have some issues as an independent film. However, look at this lighting. This lighting's amazing. Or, man, the cast is stellar, but it's not shot very well. Well, we want to be able to honor the different departments that that put in their heart and soul into projects. So we don't look for a perfect project. What we look for are, and not that we'll turn
in technical stuff.
Yes, and we want to recognize how much work really goes into independent film.
Yeah.
Because a lot of times, one of the things I've said, and I'm going to sound like a jerk, but it's kind of true. If you really think about it. Now, I'm not saying this in a conceited way like me, but independent filmmakers as a group, there are independent filmmakers out here who could go to Hollywood and make a incredible film on their budget, However, there are very few Hollywood directors who could come and work on our budget.
I'd like to see someone try to make a movie for how much I made Letters to Daniel for.
Yeah. And my point isn't that we're better, not at all.
That's just that's just the nature of the beast.
Yeah. And when I'm, it's really a matter of we have to learn. We have to learn tricks to do a lot more with a lot less. We did a clean exit, which did very well at the festival circuit. We made that movie on, I think, $12,000.
Wow.
But there's a lot of action sequences that are big. There's a lot of locations, fairly large cast, and we did it with almost nothing.
I know what you mean. $6,000 for Letters to Daniel.
Yeah. Well,
but I'll be honest, the largest portion of my budget went to post-production.
But a clean exit's twice as long.
Yeah.
So yeah,
So
I get it.
that kind of bears out.
Yeah.
Um, let's see. Okay, so now I'm going to pivot. Artists of all stripes.
Pivot.
Artists of all stripes seem to experience mental illness more so than most. Why do you think that is?
I think that's probably because artists are creative, and when you're creative, can often your brain's going a million miles a minute, and a lot of times you are thinking of things that haven't even happened or may not happen or are just things that could happen, in your mind. So I think a lot of times it's a matter of an overactive brain. But that overactive brain is also what makes you creative.
Yeah.
So, um, there's, um, I think there's something to be said for just the problem with being creative is that you are creative and you can find creative ways to punish yourself too. So, the brain can be your best friend or your worst enemy.
Yeah. Okay. 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 Have you either personally or as a caregiver ever experienced mental health issues firsthand? If so, how so?
Yeah, here's what I have not personally uh, suffered from any mental illness that at least I am aware of. I do have some issues with ADD and things like that, but I've never had to be medicated for it, and I've always been able to center myself. So I've been really lucky in my personal mental wellness is I'm very very good at kind of self evaluating where I'm at and how I'm feeling. And then I'm really good at getting myself either out of a funk or, keeping myself from getting too excited and keeping myself fairly regulated. I have seen it a lot, and one of the things that I probably had to work on the most in my 20s was not understanding mental health. So I think throughout my 20s, I had to kind of learn that just because you don't experience it doesn't mean it's not real and doesn't mean that it's not affecting someone else in a meaningful way. Uh, so what I've had to learn to do is take a step back and see how I can be of help as opposed to, because I think a lot of guys, at least not all, but a lot of guys, we tend to want to fix things, and sometimes you just need to listen.
Yeah, it seems like
Um,
sometimes it can't be fixed. Sometimes
yeah, well, exactly, and you have to learn that is that sometimes your job is just to listen, one,
yeah,
and two, sometimes it's just to
be
support
there.
and
Yeah,
help.
yeah,
That's something I've had to teach myself, and I wasn't always good at it in my 20s. I don't think if anyone I knew who was suffering, they wouldn't think of me as helpful at all from my 20s. And then I grew into where I was able to be more helpful and uh, not judgmental. And the judgmental didn't come from a mean place. It came from a uh, lack of understanding. And then as you educate yourself and you learn, you know, like I said, just because it's not real to me doesn't mean it's not real to other people.
yeah.
Um, and just because I haven't experienced it doesn't mean someone else isn't experiencing something I can't imagine. So I've had to learn to, you know, uh, shut up and listen.
We work in an industry that frowns upon any perceived weakness. What is your philosophy on that, and what do you think we can do to change the status quo?
Well, I think it's incredibly short-sighted, to be honest with you. Um, I think the best stories, the best um, the best stories out there are going to come from people who have those weaknesses, you know, who have suffered in some way. So to be short-sighted in that regard, it means you're potentially turning away great stories because you're uncomfortable.
Yeah.
And that's a really, in this industry that is where uh, creativity is the currency, it's incredibly short-sighted to turn away creativity because you're uncomfortable. So I think it's incredibly short-sighted. And I think, I think imagine telling Peter Dinklage that, well, we don't want actors who are too short. I'm sorry, you're going to have to move on. I mean, you're talking about one of the greatest actors of our generation, and it would have been incredibly short-sighted to do that. I think we need to embrace creativity wherever it comes from.
Yeah, I've not gotten many submissions for Conquering Disabilities with film yet, but the work has been incredible across the board. I mean,
well, and
the writing is incredible. Like in the documentary, Trust Me, I'm Sick.
You're also a first year. This is your first year, right?
Yeah.
First year is always the most challenging because people need to know whether or not it's a real tangible festival, whether it's going to happen. So we saw, when we did Ingenuity, we saw a big jump in submissions between year 1 and 2. Once people knew we weren't a scam and we were a legit festival,
yeah,
it jumped on, and it's continued to grow ever since. So I think just go in looking for whatever it is you're looking for, and find it in the films that get submitted, and get ready for year 2, and grow.
That's the year they hand the reins over to me, and I don't know if I'm ready for that. Because I've got a lot of help from Del and Teresa,
right,
with the running of this. So,
well, and we had a lot of help from Del and Teresa first year, and really helped us set our 2 feet on the ground. And well, it's funny because I've had people ask me, well, why don't you grow Ingenuity into something bigger? And my comment's always been, I don't want to be AOF on the East. AOF already exists. I'm trying to be a small little. We got a review on Film Freeway that said Ingenuity was more like a family reunion, and I couldn't have been prouder, because that's what we were kind of setting.
Yeah, I haven't had the ability to come yet, but getting there is such an ordeal. From where I come, if I come from Louisville, it's like we said, okay, take a train, and it was like 31 hours because they're sending me to the middle of the nation to just send me back
right
to the East Coast. So I don't know if I can come this year yet, but definitely if I'm selected, I'll want to try to make that a destination, because you've just been so helpful to me in my career and giving me advice and everything.
Well, advice is always free.
Yeah, and you didn't just give me advice. You helped me you collaborated with me on my passion project and made it look like what I wanted it to look like. So,
I was happy to be involved.
Okay. When coping with you mentioned this about you deal with ADD. When coping with that, what kind of tools do you employ to get through maybe a hard, like if you're having a hard time focusing, or what kind of things do you do to help with that?
Well, I mean, it depends. If I can feel that it's a little overwhelming that day, is a lot of times I'll write the day off and I'll play video games for the hand-eye movement, and sometimes I'll watch some fast movies, because they'll kind of, if they're high action, I can kind of focus in and address. I know it sounds weird because you'd think that with everything going on, my brain would do this, but actually I tend to focus in and narrow my vision as opposed to looking at everything and going a little spastic. I don't really think of it as something I suffer through. It's just something I have to deal with. And
it's everyday life.
Yeah. Well, and here's the thing. But see, this is, and I understand this is a privilege, in some ways, is that I am terrified of, walking up to people and talking to them. I don't like big groups. I don't like being in front of an audience. I don't like talking.
Getting those awards.
Well, that's just it. Is I basically spend, what I end up doing is, before I'm going to do something like that, and I teach classes, I do seminars. What I do is, about a half hour beforehand, is I just kind of get myself centered, and I kind of am force myself to deal. But I understand that that's I'm lucky to be able to do that, because there are many people who suffer from incredible stage fright or fear of speaking and can't get that under control. So I know that I'm lucky to be able to deal with it.
You've had years to develop this skill.
Yeah, well, and I did a lot of it. A lot of coping with it was in high school. I belong to an organization called DECA. I think it's nationwide. It's basically a program where you learn what it's like to work. So you go to school for half the day and you go to a job for half the day, and you get graded on your work at your job. So what I would do is, that really helped me in developing in the ability to speak and to do things. And then my teacher told me I would be a fantastic state president, which meant I was going to have to give a speech in front of like 12,000 people.
Oh God.
And I was aware of this, and I agreed to run. And I wrote this speech. I had everything ready to go. And I got called up, took my speech up. And now I had some training working in radio with my dad.
Yeah.
As interns and part-timer helping out and that kind of thing. So I'd kind of learned how to speak, and I had learned how to deal with the nerves. And my teacher was instrumental in helping me, breathe and calm down. And I took one look at my speech and realized I really didn't want to deliver that speech. And I put the speech away in my pocket, and I just talked to everyone. And what I did is I focused on like one person here, one person here, one person here, and I ignored everybody else. And I ended up getting elected.
Oh.
So then I had to go do speech after speech after speech in different districts. Nobody told me that part. But it really helped me calm down and learn what I needed to do to be in front of people like that.
I did debate all 4 years of high school, cross-ex debate, and policy debate. What we did in high school was policy debate, and then my first half of college year, the only year I was in college, I did cross-examination debate. And they're very similar.
Right.
And the thing in policy debate is it would always take me, like when I got up to give my speech, I was like I was the second speaker because I was considered a good closer. And so I'd get up in my first speech and I'd have to fight through the nerves for the first 2 minutes of the speech. But once I got through those 2 minutes, I was okay.
Right.
And if I did and whenever I did my cross examination, people didn't like to be cross-exed by me because I was really good at it. But that, like debate, I really enjoyed debating, and policy debaters, and some of the top ones, they don't speak like at a normal rate. They speak like the Micro Machine Man. Remember those old commercial and the guy like, right? That's how fast they talk, and they expect you to it's called spreading. You shoot so much information at your opponents, they can't possibly catch everything, and you bury them under evidence. Well, I finally learned how to beat them. It took me a while to learn how to do it, but we finally learned how to beat policy debaters. And I love debating, but I hated the first 2 minutes. The first 2 minutes were always the worst because, and it wasn't like there's a crowd of people in the room. It's just me and my partner, the other team, the timekeeper, and the judge. And that's it. Maybe a person from your school, your JV, watching you to learn what you're doing. And I remember it was like knuckling it through. Now, I've given one seminar. It was like a workshop, and I gave it at Imaginarium. I have to give this seminar at AOF. At Imaginarium, there were maybe 5 or 6 people in the room. I don't know how I'm going to do it at AOF because I was shaking in my boots with just that small crowd at Imaginarium.
Yeah, but here's the thing you got to keep in mind. And this is what I had to learn over the years, is that if someone's coming to a seminar to hear you speak, then they're already interested in what you have to say. You're not trying to win anybody over. They're already won over. All you have to do is not lose them.
Let me give you an example of my anxiety. My first time, this guy was doing a documentary on Kentucky filmmakers. And he came to our apartment, mine and Missy's apartment, and he turned the camera on, and I proceeded to have an anxiety attack before he ever asked a question.
You forget, I just recently edited you in front of a camera.
Yes. Oh, God, you saw how bad the nerves were. It was awful.
I witnessed it.
Yeah.
And you know what? I get it. Not everybody is meant for that. And not if it was an easy skill, everyone would do it.
If you notice, I was much more calm and relaxed in the sit down portion.
Yeah.
And asking, but I was like like asking questions. That's a comfortable position for me to be in. Like, right? I don't like to do the monologue. Like, if I could cut the monologue out, I would. But I know in a talk show on TV, they expect the monologue.
Then write a seminar where you are asking questions and get to answer them.
Okay, that's good advice. Okay.
I mean, if that's what if you like the conversation,
yeah, that I actually do well with question and answer.
Then that's how you set it up. What you have to learn, I think, with seminars and with talking is you've got to play to your strength and do what you do comfortably. Don't try to force it, because if you force it, the audience can tell. Okay. So just have a fun conversation with yourself.
Okay. So now let's have some fun.
Okay.
If life was a movie, what would the title be?
If life was a movie?
If your life was
a movie. If my life.
What would the title be?
Controlled Chaos.
Why?
Oh, well, it's really not that chaos. But when you have, we have 3 kids, one off at college and 2 younger brothers who are very energetic and playful.
I love conversations from the Gaige household.
Oh, thank you. Yeah, that's fun. But those are all real. I mean, that's the conversations we have. So sometimes I'll embellish them as a writer, but not much. Yeah, we have a very energetic household, so that's a good thing.
Yes.
Chaos has never really bothered me.
Okay. If you could cast anyone in the cinematic universe to play you in that movie, who would it be and why?
Oh, Jack Black. Jack Black, I think. I love his energy, and I'm not that energetic, but I really I think he's an underrated actor when it comes to doing heartfelt moments.
I just saw him
Yeah.
as Manji too, and there was a real humanity to that character, and him doing.
But he's very good at that.
Yeah, and him acting like a prissy little girl is got to be the funniest thing.
Yeah, yeah. I would be okay with that.
Okay. Who are some of your heroes, and would you like why would you like to meet them?
Well, Elmer Leonard is a writing hero of mine, and I did get to meet him.
Oh wow, what was he like?
Elmer Leonard was incredible. I've got a great Elmer Leonard story.
Tell it.
I went to a seminar of his, and it was incredible. It was, he basically spoke for about it was about an hour, maybe 40 minutes on his thoughts about writing and his personal policy when it comes to writing. And it was brilliant. Afterwards, there was a book signing. And I knew that I have every book he ever wrote. And I brought them all. And I knew he wasn't going to be able to sign them all.
Right.
Because there's going to be so many people.
Yeah.
But I wanted to bring them. And as I was in line, I figured I would start thinking about which ones do I really want him to sign.
Yeah.
And we're going through the line, and it's taken forever. My wife was working the event. She used to work with book signings and events like this.
Oh, wow.
So I knew I was there for the entire night anyway.
Yeah.
So I got at the end of the line. I'm going to be here anyway. There's no sense in getting in someone else's way. Yeah. So I get at the back of the line. Well, there are a couple of stragglers show up, and I got about 6-7 people behind me. And we're getting closer and closer to the line. Well, as I'm getting closer, Elmer Leonard's got a PR guy from the publisher. And the PR guy is like, Mr. Leonard, we have to go. You're going to have to, hurry this along. And Elmer Leonard just kind of waved him off, and guy sat down, waited, and he's like jumping around, like getting impatient. And he comes back up as I'm getting even closer, and he says, "Really, Elmer, Mr. Leonard, you're going to have to limit this to just 1 or 2 books. We have to go." And Elmer just waved him off. Now I'm up there, and there's a guy in front of me.
500-pound gorilla, so.
Well, and then a guy gets up. There's one guy between me and the table.
Right.
And he comes up and he says, "Mr. Leonard, seriously, you have to get this going. We're late for the party." And Elmer Leonard had just had it. This was the 3rd time that he had waved the guy off. And Elmer Leonard just looked up very politely, held up his finger and said, "Excuse me," turned around, looked at the guy. And this is probably not safe for work. But he looked at the guy and he says, "Son, all of these people paid for my damn house. If they want me to sign a book, I will do that. And you know what? They pay your salary too. So sit down, shut up, and we'll leave when we're done." And then I get up there and I've got this bag of books and I'm like, it's okay. If you could just sign this book. And he goes, "Son, just pull them all out of the bag. I'm signing them all. And I appreciate you buying them all."
You should thank that PR guy.
And he signed every single book. And we're making I grew up near Detroit, and he's from Detroit. So we talked about Detroit, and he's just signing every book. And we had a great conversation about Detroit. And we actually knew a couple of the same people because my dad worked in Detroit radio for like 30 years earlier. So I knew some of my dad's friends who he knew. And we're just having this great conversation as he's signing every single book, not even paying a flick of attention to the PR guy who is just turning beet red at this point. And Elmore Leonard's like, yes, I will. Yeah. Oh, you've got this one too. Oh, I haven't seen this cover recently. And he's just taking his sweet time signing every book.
Thank that PR guy.
And it was great. It was a wonderful experience. And he was his seminar was phenomenal. I think I still have the notes from the seminar.
It's like I've gotten to meet Maurice Bernard on 3 separate occasions. And they've each been very different experiences. Like the first year I went to him, this was like in May of 99, and it was on Mother's Day.
Oh, wow.
Right. And it was at Charlestown Races, West Virginia.
Oh, that's like 4 miles from my house.
Yes. We stayed in the worst motel. It was awful. But I wasn't diagnosed at that time.
Mm.
But we had written a script and we wanted to get it to him. And our film school instructor said, you have to get around the gatekeepers. So we bought a ticket to we were under I had this grand idea. We were going to cast him. And so we had to get him the script. Now he had his PR people around, and I don't know if it's a thing that actors do, but when they look at you, it's like you're the only person in the room, and it's really disconcerting because he was really attractive, and it's like, don't lose your nerve. You came here, you drove 10 hours to be here, get it. So we had, that's all. Wait. And look what he did. Like, so everybody is crowded around him. These women are crazy now. They said, I love you, Sonny. That's his character's name. And he would say, I love you too. And I said, man, these women are nuts. You shouldn't say that. And everybody was pushing forward, and he had this small space. Right. And I had the script, and I didn't know I was dealing with claustrophobia and bipolar issues. And there were all these people, and it was hot. And I had a script, so I raised my hand, and he took his microphone and he held it out for me to ask my question. And I put my head down and thought, okay, maybe this will buy me a second. The bastard took a step closer, and I was like, here's the script. And so then you had to get, after he did the Q&A, we stood in line, and we got up to him. And I said, look, we gave you a script. It's for a movie. And he said, where the fuck is my script? So he went and he got it. And there's a picture of him looking at it in a soap magazine. And they called it a scrapbook. I said, it's a script, it's not a scrapbook. But he's really great to his fans. And he does mental health advocacy because he has bipolar disorder. And I'm trying really hard to get him onto my festival, but his wife is his agent, and she is a licensed agent, but it's like she doesn't represent a whole lot of people.
Right.
And she's really protective of them. And I know why. Some people get annoyed with that because they would say there would be stories out. Oh, well, she doesn't let people get to him. Look, I couldn't do this without her. And before I was diagnosed, I said, you're killing your career. But after I was diagnosed and I'm dealing with Missy, I know why he says that, because he really does need her there to so he can lean on her. And he's got a book deal. Like, he's got a book coming out, and I hope he comes to my festival. I can't make him, but right. It would be nice to have someone who has like that come to my festival.
Well, that's awesome. Yeah. Well, good luck.
But Elmore Leonard is one of my heroes. I love his books. One of my favorite books of his is Out of Sight.
Mm-hmm.
I love the fact,
Um,
right? Like the hero is missing half his finger, and I'm like, George Clooney is playing him on screen. He's not missing half his finger. I'm like, in the book, he's missing part of a finger.
I think my favorite's actually Pagan Babies,
Oh,
which is a
all
great
his
book.
books, Elmore Leonard, he says, because he's been lots of screen adaptations. He goes, none of the movies end like my movie, end like my books. All the endings have been changed.
Yeah.
And sometimes they do that for, bottom line reasons or.
Well, and sometimes they do it because they want to surprise the audience.
Yeah. I know,
You know.
like movies and books, when people say, oh, the book is better, or oh, the movie is better, to me, it's apples and oranges. They're two totally different experiences, and really, you shouldn't compare them because one, you have an unlimited budget in your head, and you can spend whatever you want
Right.
on what you see. But in a film, you're dealing with very real life tangibles like budget, locations, who's in your movie, so
Yeah, when it's free to write a movie. It's not free to make a movie.
right.
Yeah. Because if I sit down to write a book, like you said, I've got an unlimited budget on the page. If I go to make a movie, each page costs a certain amount of money.
So right. So this past year, in the first 6 months, I wrote one script and it won some awards. So that was nice, but I couldn't write past, it was at the end of February. And then I went from March to the beginning of July without writing anything because everything was focused on Letters to Daniel.
Right.
When I finished Letters to Daniel, I wrote 2 feature-length scripts, 2 full-length memoirs, 170K, 160K. So a little bit on the short side, but that's long. Those are long for me because I usually write 50K. And then I also wrote a web series pilot and a teleplay for an episode in my Guardian series. So It's like I had this major regurgitation after, because while I was filming, I couldn't concentrate on anything else. It was just
nor should you.
No, but what the danger in that is, writing is a very real release for me and helps keep me stable and balanced. So I was manic. I was hypomanic, borderline manic during filming. And I know I was because this guy did an interview with me and he wrote out everything I said. And oh my God, it was like big run-on sentence. I could just hear me talking a mile a minute, going nowhere. So, okay. So I'll move on to the next question. What is your proudest accomplishment in life?
Oh, my kids.
That's what everybody says.
Yeah. Well, I mean, anything else is, I try not to get too wrapped up in winning awards because awards are, when you win, it's so subjective, and when you have to keep in mind that what separates you from the other guy could be really, really minor.
Yeah.
It doesn't make you better. It just means you got lucky.
It means someone likes your work more than they like the other person's work.
Well, yeah, and it could be any number of things.
Could be anything. See, I've gotten better. At my first year at AOF changed my whole perspective on awards. Now, I've been fortunate enough to win every year I've gone, but I've never banked on it. Whenever I get nominated, I figure that's the win. And because the writers, the amount of talent in that writer room is just insane. And the same thing with the filmmakers, the amount of talent collectively. He doesn't screen just 40 films. He doesn't screen just 100 films. He screens 200 to 400 films at a go. And you're going to get and like you said, there's varying levels of experience, and they really like to, I think what I like about AOF the best is that they they it's like a free market, and is it a guarantee that you're going to win and get a manager and all this other stuff? Well, no, but all the materials are there. And AOF, and it's true of any festival, it's what you make of it.
Yeah, well, it's not a festival's job to it's a festival's job to put you in front of an audience and give your film an opportunity to shine.
Yeah.
So I don't get wrapped up in those kind of accomplishments but raising good kids is that I'm proud of.
Yeah. Is that a cat?
Yeah, that's Roxy.
I love cats. I do. I have one.
She's very sweet, but she won't let me pick her up. So
no,
she won't let anybody pick her up.
Luke doesn't like to be picked up, and he's got a fat bottom, so he's really heavy. He's like tiny head, big butt. Okay, and finally, for your last question.
Sure.
Finally, what advice do you have for creatives who are struggling to kind of quote unquote make it and are dealing with mental illness as well?
Well, I think here's one thing I will tell you, and this is true. Excuse me while I readjust. This is true of any situation. If you're struggling with mental illness or with any issues, you're going to have to accept the fact that nobody else is Hollywood. The industry doesn't care. They don't care whether or not you have issues. What they care about is the bottom line. And if you're meeting the deadlines and the goals and putting out the product. So I think what you need to do is, I think if you're a creative dealing with mental health issues, I think what you need to do is find out what advantages does the mental illness give you? Meaning, do you see life differently? Can you tell stories from a completely different perspective that I can't? What about your experience in life makes you unique and can be shared? So I think the goal has to be turning whatever is a negative
and
into a positive. Yeah.
Annabelle, in her intro to my book, Something to Believe In, said she took what could have been seen as a negative and turned it into a sword to smash everything with.
Right.
And it's been a process. She wants some loves.
Yeah. She wants some love. She just doesn't want to be held. Yeah.
Yeah. That don't touch me. No, don't hold me. Don't hold me.
Exactly.
I think I totally agree with you. What I started a blog. Missy said, Amy, why don't you journal this stuff? And so what started off as a open letter of gratitude to my favorite actor, really mushroomed. It didn't start out to be my memoirs, but about halfway through the letter, I said, I've just created a platform of some kind here. I can either have this blog be one letter long and just look like any other kind of fan telling a story, or I can tell my memoirs. And I always wanted to tell my memoirs. And what that form did was it allowed me to be less self-conscious about, I always wanted to tell my story, right, but I often said I didn't have enough distance between diagnosis and being better. And when I started that blog, if you followed the entries, you could see me get stronger as the blog went on.
Well, one of the things I've said a lot of times to a lot of different people is that whatever you're dealing with in life, whatever it is, can be anything. The world doesn't care. The world is not, the people who, the people who should care are your loved ones, your friends, your family. But the world as a nebulous thing, this, you know, bigger space beyond, it doesn't care. So what you have to do is make it care. And you do that by telling a compelling story that only you can tell. And that's the truth with any film, is why the number one question you have to ask yourself when you're directing something is, why do I need to tell this story?
You know, with Letters to Daniel, it couldn't be just, the blog could be just me because it was talking about my life. But right. Whenever I wanted to take it from blog form to, and I did documentary first, and then in 2015 I approached Missy. I said, Missy, I really want to tell my story, but you're such an integral part of it, you're gonna have to okay it, and we're gonna have to write it together. And she said, and it was,
I think it does require a great deal of bravery. You know, I thought with Letters to Daniel, while I was editing it, that it was very brave that you didn't put yourself in the best light all the time.
I wasn't a nice person.
Well, and that's a hard thing to do. That should be commended.
Well, for me, when I was writing it, I told Missy the way I approached it. For me, it was a love letter to caregivers everywhere.
Mm-hmm.
You know,
I can see that.
Because without at least, you need at least one person to believe in you without a doubt. And, you know, if you're married to someone, you're going to be more invested. If it's a child or a parent, you know, you're related, it's easier to take. It's not easy, but it's easier in theory to take on that responsibility. And
right.
What Missy did was she stepped up in a big way. We were not romantically linked. We were not related by blood. We were friends, and she had every chance to run away and go and just leave me. And she, you know, like she said, you accuse me of wanting to abandon you every chance we fight. And that's my fear. And that's actually something about bipolar disorder. They have fears and feelings of abandonment. And
that goes to what one of the things I said earlier is that when you're creative too, you're inventing scenarios. Even and if you're dealing with bipolar, which is already prone to giving you those thoughts, it just keeps it going.
My cat's meowing now.
Your cat's now?
Yeah, he was. Okay, well, that's my last question. John?
Oh, can we give a quick shout out to Mr. Davis here?
Yeah, Joseph Davis. I see a Sonny the Sad Doll.
Yes, my wife got it, surprised me with it for Christmas. So I was thrilled.
Yeah. John, are you here?
I am. What a great interview. I'm so sad that we weren't able to go live. I don't have any other questions other than I really appreciated the breadth and depth of your responses. And,
thank you.
And kind of like just how you were able to not only navigate the questions, but just make it personal, make it real, and give people some good advice to whether they're getting started or regardless of where they are in their journey to use. So I appreciate that. My question that I would close with would be, and I don't think you mentioned it, how did you get started? How did you figure out that this was like kind of a path creatively that you wanted to take? Because you've done it all. You've done directing, editing, writing.
Well, here's the irony. My entire life, I've been around media, so it's kind of the only job I ever knew. My dad worked in radio. He's forgotten more about radio than a lot of people will ever know. Worked in Detroit, D.C., so he's worked all over. And he was kind of a celebrity when I was growing up. And it was funny because I never wanted that life, because it wasn't anonymous. You know, we'd go to a grocery store, he'd write a check, and next thing I know, he's in a 10-minute conversation about his job.
Yep.
And I would get annoyed. Now, he wasn't famous like, you know, like most people, but he was locally, regionally famous.
Mm-hmm.
And what happened was I would just got annoyed. And I was like, I don't want to have anything to do with this. Famous last words, right? And what ended up happening was, because of my dad and his job, I got opportunities that I wouldn't have normally gotten. And I started to learn, and I started to be a part of it. And I started to do the job. I worked in radio. I worked at newspapers. I worked in television. So I've worked a little all over. And a lot of that comes from just the initial exposure. And then he worked at a television station. He was a host for a television show. And, you know, he had some pull. And he told the general manager of the television station, hey, I'd really like you to help my kid out. Get him something to do, because he would really like to see if this is what he wants to do. And I was 14 years old, and the general manager made a deal with me. If I would clean the toilet once a week, he would let me be an intern in the camera and editing department. And it was a good deal. And I ended up, that's how I got started working with cameras and with editing. And after that, I ended up getting a job where I was doing some editing, and just been involved with it ever since.
Gotcha. Okay. I have so now I have another question. Do you think that was the only time during the week that bathroom got cleaned?
Oh, I'm sure it was. I'm sure it was. I'm sure it was a case of, hey, don't worry about it. Clint will be in.
That's like that. That sounds like the hotel that Amy put us up in.
Oh, there were, man, you're so down the river. Hey, if you look on the web, Anna Maria even said if you go to their website, their rooms look a lot better than what they were.
That's
Sure
an inside story for that's an inside story for cast and crew only. But if you go back and watch previous episodes of Recovery Unplugged Live, you'll have the whole story unfold at your fingertips. So, Clint, thank you so much for being on tonight. Amy, good job as usual. We're gonna outro tonight with the Recovery Unplugged, with the Conquering Disabilities with Film, kind of like promo from our last episode.
Okay.
All right.
Thanks for having me.
All right, Clint. See you guys later. Thanks for watching the recorded version. And please follow and share Amy Unplugged Facebook page. And we'll see you guys next week.
Conquering Disabilities with Film International Film Festival is about, it takes things like films, screenplays, poems, short stories, music, photography, one sheet, like, movie posters, movies shot on your iPhone, true stories that are narrative, not necessarily documentary. And of course we take documentaries. We take a lot of different stuff, and you have to either be struggling with a mental health condition or a physical challenge, a chronic physical illness, or the material has to address mental health issues. So, and for your film, the way you qualify is if it is not about mental illness, your director or your writer or your DP or your talent needs to be facing those conditions. And you put it in the cover letter. Please, people, put it in the cover letter so I can consider you for some specialty awards. It tells me that you're qualified and that, we want to see your work. We want to honor you, and we want to honor that, we know firsthand what it's like to battle these things and to produce artwork. So the website for Conquering Disabilities with Film is Conquering Disabilities, filmfest.com, And for Film Freeway, it's filmfreeway.com/Conquering Disabilities Film Fest.